to the Lava Fantasy Football League. We're doing the Week 11 recap. Today's drink is a mocktail, no alcohol. I think I made it before actually. It's tonic with ginger, lemon, and mint. A very refreshing drink. You make it with like seltzer water. It's really good. Anyway, let's get into the recap. Lots of matchups. At the very end, we'll just do a recap of where we are with the standings because we have 3 games left with the playoffs. And so games are starting to matter. Let's go right away to Don versus Prince Llama. I had one of the better games that I've had this year. And it's kind of me relying on the Lions to do good, and they did great. They had a terrible game until the last 4 minutes, and then they just balled out and broke records coming back and winning that game. Eric had sad scores across the board, except for his Buffalo D, who he was about to drop, but he kept, and they balled out. So I don't know. Question mark: Are you still gonna drop him? Drop that D. For me, Goff threw 3 interceptions, so that really drags him down. Amon-Ra St. Brown continues to do well, receiving touchdowns, 77 receptions. Calvin Ridley finally shows up. This is me just hanging on to him for dear life. People benching him after weeks of ineptitude, and he finally balls out, and he rewarded me being my top scorer. Breece Hall had a solid game even though they got smashed. Gibbs also continues to be good. Laporta didn't do so great until the very end. I think this is really buoyed by a 2-point conversion. And Jamal Williams is he's my home run hitter, and he hit a home run, so that really helped me with the scores. For Eric, sad scores from McLaurin, Rice, Derrick Henry, Najee Harris. Donald Parham actually had a really good game. And Jones looks like he got hurt, so that's going to be scary. Off the bench, looks like I played it right. Eric had a solid game from Warren. May consider having to move him into the lineup, especially with Jones being hurt. And then Zay Flowers, I think we're kind of settled into like a hierarchy of the wide receivers. Zay Flowers had a nice start, but he's kind of tapered off a little bit. Some of the other rookie wide receivers have overtaken him, in my opinion. Next up, Darren versus Mike. Mike balls out. I think he might have like the top score of the week, and he continues to look scary because his team, they're gonna go. It's set up really nicely for him to go deep into the playoffs as well. Mahomes, I feel bad for Mahomes. There was a lot of points left on the table. There was a lot of drop balls, drop touchdowns, and penalties that went against him. It was a rough night to see. He continues to be excellent, and so you're going to continue to start him. Tyler Boyd, this is the first instance that we see the results of no longer of a lost Burrow. We're going to come back to that because that's the big news of the week. Tyler Lockett had a decent game. Christian McCaffrey continues to ball out. And then sad scores from Murray, Ferguson, Kirk, and Butker. Dallas D, strong again. For Mike, his dominance continues. DJ Moore had a touchdown. They look great. Like we said, on the flip side, the Bears look great. And so they are fantasy relevant, especially DJ Moore with Justin Fields back. Devontae Smith, I'm surprised the score is where it's at. He probably deserved a touchdown, but he didn't get one. But he looked like wide receiver 1 yesterday. They put the clamps on AJ Brown, and Devontae Smith was his go-to guy. It was between him and DeAndre Swift. Saquon Barkley balled out. This is another big-time game. He had 2 receiving touchdowns. 83 rushing yards and 57 receiving yards. He is looking dominant despite them having DeVito as a quarterback. And since no one started him, he really made DeVito look good. DeVito had what, like 3 touchdowns? We were just smashing him like the past few weeks. He does not look like a NFL quarterback, but they pull off this win over Washington. You never know. It's kind of crazy. Gus Bus continues to look dangerous. 2 rushing touchdowns. TJ Hawkinson, solid score from a tight end. Cortland Sutton, game-winning touchdown, helping him get that score. His kicker, not so much, and the defense, not much to be right home about. And then off the bench, Kyler Murray is a solid backup that he has there if he needs him. But just speaking of how he's really set up, uh, his quarterback Jalen Hurts, they're gonna have some tough matchups going down. If you look at the Philadelphia Eagles schedule, and so if they're gonna want to stay in the hunt for that first place, they're gonna have to keep playing. They're gonna have to keep playing. We have like the Lions and a couple other teams breathing down their neck. Barkley's gonna continue to play. Edwards is gonna continue to play. Actually, I don't know. Maybe in a championship game, they might like if Baltimore has a comfortable lead, then they may not need to play him. But he's really set up nicely for a good playoff run. Richie versus Mike L. Oh man, this was a surprise, and I think if you look at Mike's record, he looks like he's out, but he does help other players by knocking Richie down a peg. He knocks him below 500 score, but this is a close one. Essentially, 2 points, 2 to 3 point difference. Lamar Jackson, one of his better games, 2 passing touchdown and a lot of yards on the ground. CD Lamb coming down a little bit, but still solid. Stephon Diggs. Now there's another interesting number. His numbers are trending down for some reason, even though they won. So it's kind of looking like as Dalton Kincaid is trending up, he's been trending down. And I think you have Kincaid, right? Yeah. So the numbers are a little bit closer, but um, that's just what it's starting to look like. David Montgomery balling out, running a game-winning touchdown in this incredible come from behind victory for Detroit over Chicago. Brian Robinson, a solid game. Um, Dalton Kincaid, we just talked about him. Connor's a decent score. Hopkins, okay score. And then for Mike, being able to pull out this win, yeah, kind of an underwhelming score from Russell Wilson. That game ended up being like a field goal festival. But they got just enough to win with that 1 passing touchdown to Cortland Sutton. Devontae Adams back and balling. They lost this game, but they kept it close. Brandon Ayuk, he's healthy again. This is what his second or third week back, and he's just balling. Singletary, he looks like RB1 now, taking over Dameon Pierce, and he's helping Houston do really well. Darrell Henderson had a rushing touchdown. Dalton Schultz had a really good game, 1 receiving touchdown. And then not much from Cooper, not much from Folk and your Baltimore D. Off the bench, you had several buys, and you have some unhealthy players that you're kind of hanging on to. Jefferson has to come back. I think he is at the tail end of the coming back period, so you're gonna have him back. Unfortunately, I think Mike is just on the outside looking in of the playoffs. Morgan versus James. James pulls off the win, dragging Morgan down a peg and clawing to get that same. This was a close, low-scoring game. Dobbs continues to be a decent option for Morgan. He's been looking for that quarterback. He seems like he found him. Thielen, a solid game from him. Jamar Chase, again, even though he had this touchdown, tragedy hits that team, and we'll talk about it later when we get to a later matchup. Travis Etienne, they didn't need him as much, I guess, but he has been like dominant throughout the year. This is kind of a come down game for him, but I think it's just a matter of the share. A lot of more of the point shares went to other players, like Calvin Ridley, for example. Kenneth Walker, I think he got did he get hurt? I think he got hurt early on, and it had to go to Charbonnet. So that's a tough break. So hopefully he stays healthy for Morgan. And Joku had a really good game, 7 receptions. That's a lot for a tight end. Jahan Dotson, a decent game. Not much from Elliott and the Philadelphia D. Um, they did enough to win the game, but it didn't really reflect for fantasy. And then for James pulling out the win, a big time game from Justin Herbert. He has been balling out despite the team just barely losing. And look at these scores. This is kind of like incredible to be able to pull out a win with Cooper Kupp getting hurt and only giving you 1 catch. AJ Brown being held, he was healthy, but they just game planned him out and just did not let him have the ball. He had 1 catch for 8 yards. Rashad White had a solid game. AJ Dillon, okay game. Cole Kmet, not that great. Debo Samuel, okay. But a big time kicking game from Joe Myers. 2 field goals over 50. So that accounts for like 5 points each. So big time score from him in the Denver D. That was okay. And then off the bench, we see for Morgan, he picks up Stafford, who had an underwhelming game. I think he looks hurt. Rondale Moore had a good game. He had a nice long touchdown bomb to him, so he's a good option to have. But that's kind of a more boomer bust. And then for James, he has the other running back, the handcuffed Zach Charbonnet, and he did okay. This is a decent score, I guess, but in terms of how he looks, doesn't look as good as Kenneth Walker being the lead guy. Gary versus Jeremy. I guess Jeremy had the highest score. 143.5. Gary had Sam Howell. He picked up Sam Howell. And he continues to put up big fantasy points. Tank Dell. So here is one of the wide receivers that has kind of taken close to that pole position for rookie wide receivers. He has 149 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown, eight receptions. He looks like wide receiver one for CJ Stroud, and he's kind of taken over in terms of rookie wide receivers. Puka Nacua is still up there, but Tank Dell has kind of, like, to me, less reliable are guys like JSN, Addison, Zay Flowers. Quentin Johnson has been kind of creeping up a little bit, but oh man, painful drop for him, costing them a win. Jalen Waddle, he continues to be the odd man out for that wealth of fantasy points on that team. Josh Jacobs had an okay game. Ford looks solid, having 12 rushing attempts, 31 rushing yards and a touchdown. Kelsey, this is a really good fantasy game, but if you watched the game yesterday, he did not look as good. He looked tired, and maybe flying to Argentina or whatever to see Taylor Swift, it takes a toll on you. Jet lag takes a toll on you. Maybe he looked like he was jet lagged. Javonte Williams had a okay game, but as a feature back, you kind of want more. Patterson only settled for 3 extra points, and the Jacksonville D they actually were pretty solid, but this fantasy score does not really reflect that. And then for Jeremy, Josh Allen, 3 passing touchdowns, helping them stomp on the Jets. Keenan Allen continues to look crazy good. A touchdown, 116 receiving yards. Tyreek Hill looks scary again. I remember I was talking about how AJ Brown was kind of pushing him for that wide receiver best wide receiver spot. Well, AJ Brown only had 1 catch for 8 yards. Tyreek Hill is back and being dominant again. I don't know why he's questionable. Raheem Mostert is also healthy. There was a brief. We'll talk about him later, but Mostert is the guy right now. And DeAndre Swift had a really solid game. I think he was a big reason why they pulled off that win, because Philly was held in check by Kansas City, but in the second half they got some big time chunk plays from the Swift the other Swifties, DeAndre Swift and Devontae Swift. So, good job by those guys. Evan Ingram had an okay score. Actually, pretty underwhelming. Isaiah Pacheco, he looks like he's running like he's the Tasmanian devil, but this is the points that he gets. They could have used more. They really needed a lot more running ability from him. So it's kind of a lot of flash and not as much substance. Both him and who's the other receiver that they got? Dicker had a nice game, and the Miami D was pretty solid. And off the bench, Metcalf showed up and balled out. I don't know if you really needed him. Probably you could have taken. No, your other receivers are still better. Maybe you flex him in instead of Pacheco. Tajay Spears okay game. Hopkins had actually a receiving touchdown, so kind of salvaged that. Like he's had a couple of down weeks ever since that breakout game with Will Levis. Puka Nacua, like we said, maybe he continues to take the top spot for rookie wide receivers. It's kind of incredible though that he's not a first round wide receiver, but there he is on top. Chandler had a really good game for you, so that's a lot of points left on the bench. And then you got Baker Mayfield getting you 15 points. Other than that, Jeremy just dominated this game and pulls out that win. He looks like the other big time contender. And then Brad versus Aaron. We're saving the saddest for last. So tragedy hits Brad because on Thursday Night Football, Burrow gets hurt and then he's lost for the season. In terms of Brad, you know, when you're down so bad, it all you can do is laugh at that point, right, Brad? It's just like it in another fantasy football universe, it could be a lot more devastating for someone. So maybe like a front runner has Burrow and he loses him as a starting quarterback and he doesn't have anybody to replace him. That can really change the dynamic. But for you, you also have a really solid quarterback on your bench, Purdy, to replace him. So it doesn't hurt as much technically, but it's just really silly and sad to see for you. It's like I feel your pain. Take a look. You also lost Mark Andrews for the year. Devon A-Chain, healthy and ready to go, shows up for a couple of plays and then just checks out. So we don't know what's going to happen to him. So it's Murphy's Law for Brad. Anything that could go wrong goes wrong for Brad's team. It's just really sad. James Cook is your best player on the day, which is nice to see from him because they haven't been producing much on the ground for a while now. But here he is showing out that game. And then off your bench, we already talked about Purdy. You can actually slip him into your starting lineup and just take out Burrow. And then for Aaron, he gets this win. Again, we talk about C.J. Stroud. He didn't have his greatest game, but he's a baller. Really, really nice to see as a rookie, and so he's gonna be moving up the draft board as he has a clear-cut stranglehold on both top rookie quarterback and as well as rookie of the year. He's pretty much the offensive rookie of the year. So amazing to see from him. Mike Evans got you a receiving touchdown. Not much from Hollywood Brown. Austin Eckler kind of had a sad game. Tony Pollard showed up. So it's nice to see him getting 61 rushing yards and a touchdown. A catching touchdown. George Kittle also showed up. Big time game from him. 89 receiving yards, 8 catches, and 1 receiving touchdown. Javon Reed had a nice, solid game. Justin Tucker also solid, and then you have the Pittsburgh D. Off the bench, you have Fields, who looks great. They had a really sad loss, but he looks good. And if they continue to go forward, those Chicago Bear players are decent fantasy options. So nice to look out for him. So going to be a tough to decide. CJ Stroud or Justin Fields. Maybe Justin Fields kind of gets the edge a little bit because of his running ability, but CJ Stroud has been really, really solid. All right, so that's the recaps for the week. In terms of where we are, let's just briefly reflect on the standings. I think it's pretty clear that Mike and Jeremy are locked in. They're already going to finish with a above 500 record. Conversely, I think Mike L and Brad are out. It's just a tough break. They have a chance though to muck up this middle, because look at this, from 3 to 9, to 10, we are all within one game. There are 1, 2, 3, 6, and 5 teams, actually 4, 6, and 5 teams, and 4, 5, and 6 teams. And so between the next 3 games, there's going to be a chance to move up, to go down. I don't know, but we'll see. So it's going to be an interesting next 3 weeks. Take a look at who you're matched up against. The trade deadline came and went November 18th, so they can't really make any trades to try to help your team. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, because I think I'm trying to I would like to kind of see trades happen, because it's another component, an aspect for a manager to try to improve their team. But you also need to incentivize it, right? I think everyone's going for the same things, but sometimes maybe in the case for like for both Mike L and Brad, maybe there's something can be done where they just end up tanking and trade away, but they need some kind of future capital to incentivize trading their players away. But we'll talk about that later. Anyways, that's it. We try to keep it short today, so we'll talk to you later. Okay, we'll see you later.